Timothy Alberino is a best-selling author. He is the author of Birthright. He has spent over a decade living in the Amazon basin region, spending time visiting various areas, including those areas that recently became very popular because of the stories concerning attacks by aliens on the Ikitu tribe in the Peruvian Amazon region. So he's here today to tell us about what he knows of those attacks, local legends about aliens and the paranormal in Peru.
You are listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla, your source for the uncensored truth regarding the human, extraterrestrial, global, and political agenda. Click the like button and subscribe to this channel. And now, here's Dr. Michael Salla.
Well, welcome back, Timothy. Good to have you on Exopolitics Today again.
Thank you so much for having me back, Dr. Salla.
Well, it really is quite sensational what has been happening in Peru. The world media seems to be transfixed on it. And you seem to be the kind of expert, because of the time you spent there. And I believe you speak the local dialect, or you speak Spanish. So, can you tell us anything about your time spent in that Peruvian Amazon basin and what you know of the Ikitu tribe?
Well, I lived for a decade in the Peruvian Amazon basin. Part of that time was spent up in the Iquitos region, and I've gone deep up into the Amazon, up the River Masan, into what is really almost uncharted territory up, and that's very serious jungle up there, very close to the Alto Nanay, which is the district where this incident took place. I have spent a lot of time with various different native tribes up there and tribal leaders. I'm not sure that I've ever that I have any contacts in the Ikitu tribe or any friends in the Ikitu tribe. I don't recall. But there's a lot of different tribes mixed together in that area. And when we say tribes, these aren't, they're not running around in grass skirts with blowguns. These are villagers who are at this point somewhat modernized. So, but they're still divided in that region. They still have their tribal territories, the traditional regions in which their ancestors inhabited. And again, this particular area of the jungle in Alto Nanay, the village of San Antonio de Pintuyacu, is the territory of the Ikitu tribe. So I've not, to clarify, I've not actually been to San Antonio, but am generally familiar with that area.
But you do know the language, they speak with a particular dialect, and I know that there were videos shown of the villagers talking about what had happened, and you were able to kind of hear the nuances of that. So you want to tell us about that?
They speak Spanish. They also speak their own dialects, but almost all of them speak Spanish as well. But it's a jungle Spanish. And I learned Spanish in the jungle, so I actually happen to have their accent. They call it charapa, and charapa is a river turtle, and they call it charapa because they speak a little bit slower and they use a lot of slang from their own languages. So I would say that the particular dialect of the peoples of the Amazon jungle in Peru is the kind of Spanish that I speak best.
Okay, well, that's very helpful, because these videos, I mean, that's kind of like all we have to go on in terms of like what the villagers experienced, and they're talking about it. And of course, there's this image of the injured girl who was attacked. They tried to abduct her, and so can you kind of like walk us through what happened to her? What did the villagers say?
Okay. I've watched today, this morning, I watched a video of this 15-year-old girl recounting her experience. So this incident, which has been ongoing since mid-July, and I don't know if it's ongoing at the present moment, but it certainly extended into the first week of August. It began when a 15-year-old girl was nearly abducted by what she described as strange beings in the jungle. She was apparently able to scream before passing out and alerted the village. And I'm pretty sure that this occurred in broad daylight. She sustained lacerations to her neck during the altercation with these entities or people or whoever these individuals were that were trying to abduct her. She was in a state of shock for a period of time when she came to. And so whatever happened to this 15-year-old girl was extremely traumatic. There's no question about that. The villagers were they were alerted to what had happened, and they began to look for the presumed human perpetrators. They understood that someone had tried to abduct this young girl, and so they began to look for the perpetrators and were armed with rifles and shotguns. What they found instead is what they described as extraterrestrial beings. And so that incident kicked off a week or two of terror in this village, in which these villagers every night were in a state of high alert. There's several videos circulating online of these villagers running around with guns and flashlights at nighttime. The women and children are huddled together in the middle of the village. They're obviously terrified, and you can actually see the villagers running around firing at something in the jungle, discharging their rifles and their shotguns at something in the jungle. And in fact, in one of the videos, one of the guys has a flashlight in his hand, and he's flashing it up in the trees, and he yells, "There it is, there it is!" And they're all looking at this thing in the trees, and this thing, in my estimation, appears to be a tall gray alien, and we can discuss that. But that's interesting with all the media coverage and all the so-called debunking of this situation, of this incident. No one is talking about that video. Everybody's just talking about miners with jetpacks. So the village, after being terrorized for several nights or weeks by these beings that were continually making incursions into their village, or attempting to, or at least hanging around on the outskirts of their village at night, the village demanded the intervention of the Navy. And the Navy did indeed show up and conducted an investigation. Now, what these men are saying, I've listened to several different videos in which these guys are describing these beings. What they're saying is that these whatever is attacking their village, whatever was attacking their village, was 7 feet tall. They were arrayed in silver armored bodysuits. They were likened to the Green Goblin from Spider-Man, in the sense that they had these bodysuits and they were able to levitate off the ground. And sometimes they say they were wearing masks. They described these strange shoes that had discs on the bottom of them that project a red light, with which they're able to float off the ground, a meter off the ground, but also to ascend into the air. And apparently these beings are bulletproof and have the ability to disappear, because these men have fired point blank at these beings, and presumably with shotguns, because that's what you're going to find most of the time in the jungle, is shotguns, but also an assortment of rifles, but primarily shotguns. So they're firing shotguns, probably with birdshot, directly at these beings, these intruders, and they're just disappearing, or they're just ascending into the air. There's no blood. There's no dead bodies. So obviously we're dealing with something very mysterious. Now, I mentioned that the Navy did come and do an investigation, an official investigation, and they determined that what's actually happening in this village is an attempted abduction and an intentional terrorizing of these villagers by illegal gold miners supported with cartel money. That's the narrative coming out of the Peruvian media, the Peruvian press. By the way, the Peruvian the press surrounding this incident in the beginning was deadly serious. Nobody was laughing. Nobody was making fun of these villagers. It was deadly serious. And I think that's why this story ended up going viral, was because of the way that the Peruvian media was reporting it. They were quite concerned. And these villagers were so certain that what they were looking at was some kind of extraterrestrial or pelacara, face peelers. And so it warranted serious coverage by the media, which it received. But now, of course, the media is running with the miners story, and it's. I think we're watching a cover up in real time, because somebody had to concoct a story, a cover story that satisfied all of the details of this incident. You couldn't just say that miners were attacking this village, because the villagers were insistent on the fact that they were not running through the jungle at night, mind you. They're floating through the jungle, and they're ascending into the air. And so the story had to satisfy those details. And so what the Navy ended up coming out with is that their investigations, that they've determined that not only are these illegal miners attacking this village, but they're equipped with state-of-the-art jetpacks, and they're coming into this village at nighttime, and they're terrorizing these villagers to try to drive them out of the area, I suppose. There is a historical precedent for these kind of clashes, not these kind of clashes, but for clashes between miners and cartels and these native people who have the rights to these lands. If they want to come in and mine the rivers, then sometimes they'll try and scare the natives off. Sometimes they'll try and they'll abduct people. They'll even kill people and terrorize the villagers to try and get them out of this area. I'm sorry, my 3-year-old just walked in. So there is a historical precedent for this, but not miners with jetpacks floating through the thick canopy of the jungle at nighttime. So this seems to be entirely contrived to, as I said, to satisfy the details of this very, very strange incident.
Attacks are very, very loud, and they're being shot at. So clearly, this is not just a miner coming in on a jetpack, having shotguns and rifles kind of shots going off against them, and them not being affected. There's something else going on. But yeah, I agree. This sounds like that's a cover story to explain away something that seemed to just go viral.
Yes, and again, I want to reiterate something. Okay, I can I can go with miners or terrorizing the villagers to try and get them out of this region so that they can mine the river. And by the way, they mine the river with mercury. Very, very. It's a very destructive way to mine for gold in these rivers. They kill the fish. They kill the biological diversity of the river. I've seen it firsthand. It's quite destructive. So I can go with the press, the Navy's conclusion that maybe these are miners. Okay, fine. Dressing up like aliens or something, like the Green Goblin from Spider-Man. Okay, all right. But I can't, I cannot accept the jetpack part of this story, because I've lived in the Amazon. I've lived in this region. You're talking about very thick jungle. and these incursions, these intrusions into this village are happening at night. So not only are you dealing with the thick canopy of the jungle, you're doing it at night. And unless these cartels and miners are equipped with top secret military hardware, and very, very much more advanced than anything in the public sector, then this is a complete. Then this is complete nonsense. This jetpack stuff, and at first I couldn't believe that the Peruvian press was actually running with this, but I did in fact find some articles in which they're claiming that these miners are equipped with this advanced hardware, with these jetpacks. That, of course, it doesn't answer any of the other questions. How is it that they disappear? I mean, okay, you can have jetpacks. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that you can be equipped with jetpacks, and they're so advanced that they're silent and that they're not, causing a ruckus in the jungle as you're maneuvering around the trees, okay? And let's say that these are highly skilled jetpack miners who can maneuver around the trees without crashing and up through the canopy without crashing. But I can't think of, okay, maybe they have some sort of high-tech military cloaking device. I mean, it's really got to get ridiculous to satisfy the details of this story. And it's just amazing to me that people online have readily adopted this explanation. And when I read comments and videos, they say, oh, this has been debunked. It's miners, gold miners. It's been debunked. And I've never seen anything so ridiculous. I've never seen the unfolding of a cover-up story in real time. This is far more ridiculous than the Roswell story of a balloon or whatever they said been Roswell. This is like circus ridiculous. And again, I can believe that miners are screwing around, terrorizing these villagers. I can go there, but I can't do the jetpack thing.
I think it's well worth coming back to look at that possibility of some kind of advanced technology being used to make the villagers believe that these are aliens. But but for the moment, I mean, you know of the local legends, the Pelacaras, I believe you pronounce it.
Pelacaras.
That these are cases of people going through some kind of mutilation. And so can you maybe explain what those legends tell us about these kinds of abductions and why you think that's connected to tall gray aliens?
Well, the legend of the Pelacaras is a popular legend in the jungle. And it's one of those legends that's ubiquitous, that no matter where you are in the Peruvian Amazon, you're going to hear about the Pelacaras, among other creatures. And these entities are described as very nefarious creatures that abduct and mutilate people, much like cattle mutilations in the USA that we're all familiar with. They're described variously. Sometimes, and you'll actually hear in the videos coming out of this village, some of the men are talking about Pelacaras, and sometimes they're described as being cloaked, and that they have like glowing yellow or red eyes, and they're cloaked. And they come at nighttime and they abduct the villagers and mutilate them. And oftentimes villagers are found with part or all of their face missing and just bleached bone beneath, like a cattle mutilation. And so it's very strange. It's quite a frightening tale. And the jungle folk swear that these things are real. And a lot of, and if you were to go into the jungle right now, into this region, and ask the villagers, and, maybe not in this particular town, but certainly in the surrounding region, what they think happened in San Antonio, they'll probably tell you that they were attacked by the Pelacaras. That's probably what a lot of them would say. They would say that, they would affirm that much more than like miners with jetpacks. But But the legend is pervasive, and it's ongoing. It's not like, you know, a legend of something that used to happen. It's a legend of something that does happen continually, and that these people are always concerned about. And that this is one of the reasons why, you know, don't go out at night in the jungle because of pelecaras. You might get attacked by a pelecara. So it is interesting because there is this strange association with cattle mutilations, but this happens to be human beings, in the sense that the same thing happens to the human beings that happens to the cattle in the United States.
Well, one of the things that I noticed when I just kind of did a quick internet search of pelecaras legends was that these concerned children being sacrificed, that somehow their skin was peeled off, as you described. So this was the pelecaras legends that I found online were describing children being subjected to this. And when I saw that, what immediately came to mind was a case that I worked on that is the subject of a book that's recently been released. This concerns a Singaporean super soldier, and he said that he was trained to be part of this elite squad of soldiers that would be sent to different places to fight extraterrestrials. That there were extraterrestrials that would show up, and that they would harass locals. They would show up in jungles, they would hide in caves, and they would abduct children. So he described going to Malaysia, a jungle in Malaysia, with a squad of other super soldiers. You know, they're armed to the hilt with modern tech, and they encountered, I think it was 3 reptilian extraterrestrials, and they had a battle. And eventually described. So that's that. The book's called Area 51, and that concerns a super soldier, Stephen Chua. And so when I heard about this, that there were these legends of pelecaras abducting children and being mutilated, I immediately thought of this super soldier and what he had to say about having to go into Malaysia, into the jungles, and fighting against the extraterrestrials. So I don't know if you've heard of that case.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating. And, you know, I wouldn't doubt that's true. And there might be something like that maybe is actually happening in Peru right now. But it is important to highlight the fact that, as I said earlier, the miners, the illegal miners and the cartels will take advantage of the local legends to try and drive these people off their land. They will do that. And they are brutal, as we all know. The cartels in Mexico and also in Brazil and even in Peru and Ecuador and Colombia are brutal. And so they'll come, and in some cases, you know, it wouldn't surprise me if they've tried to take advantage of the pelecara. By the way, pelecara means face peeler. It wouldn't surprise me if they tried to take advantage of this legend and abduct some people and cut their faces off and leave them lying on the side of the road or something to try and terrorize the villagers. But one thing that some of the videos that I've seen that may or may not be associated with pelecaras coming out of this region of the jungle, the Ikitu region, is I've seen some faces that are absolutely cleaned of tissue and flesh, and all they are is white bone, and the cuts are surgical. It doesn't look like somebody went to town on that face with a machete. It looks like it was surgical precision. Some of the different images I've seen, different cases, surgical precision. It looks like the skin was removed with a laser or something like that, or at least a surgical knife. And it does not. The images I've seen do not have the appearance of depredation by piranhas, for example. Piranhas would not leave a clean cut around the neck, for example. They would, and there would be nicks in the bone, by the way, from piranhas, from their teeth. Piranhas it would be a mess if it were piranhas. And I've seen that. And piranhas can clean you to the bone. There's no question about it. But it's not this sort of clean surgical situation that you see with some of these images. And I don't know if the images floating around on the internet, I featured one in a video I made the other day. I'm not sure that these have anything to do with pelacadas, but certainly the natives probably would say that they do.
I know that human mutilations are a kind of very sensitive topic, and I recall researchers that have been investigating that have been kind of warned off. Some prominent researchers, Linda Moulton Howe comes to mind, that they were told, focus on cattle mutilations, but just leave the human mutilations alone. And
Wow.
and I think there were those concerns by officials, because this has been a massive cover up, as you all know, going back decades, that there are different groups of extraterrestrials out there doing all sorts of things, and some have been involved in these human mutilation cases. And as I mentioned, this super soldier, his job was to find them, but he's not the only one. There have been others who have said the same thing. There was a Brazilian super soldier saying that he was part of this international group that was also sent to fight aliens in combat zones, and he described that they would go into combat zones, and that the aliens would show up in these contact zones. It would be kind of almost like the Predator movies.
The Predator movie, yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, this incident smacks of the Predator movie. That might be part of the reason why it's going so viral, because it's just so fantastical. The whole situation. It's just, there's so many common elements to that movie, and just the idea of some sort of alien being terrorizing people and skinning people's faces off in the jungle automatically harkens to the Predator movie.
Yes, and these beings, they may have been here a long time, or they may be visitors. They may be working with governments. We know so little about it. Now, you've mentioned tall greys. I know you go for the tall grey kind of explanation. So,
I don't know if it's tall. Let me say that I'm not sure if it's tall greys, but I'll tell you this, and I've stated this confidently every opportunity I've gotten here. If we examine that, there's a particular video in which the villagers are running around, and it's the one that I cited earlier, and with a flashlight. And they put the beam of the flashlight, they focus it up in a tree, and they start to yell, "There it is, there it is." There is something in that tree. Now, people will watch that video and say, "Oh, I just see a green blob," and sort of mock the notion that there's something there. But there is something there. When you critically examine that video and you look at it frame by frame, there is what appears to be the head of a large or tall gray, or rather, I would say, mantis-like creature, or insectilin, as Jacobs would call it, up in the tree, rather probably behind the tree. I think there's some foliage, and it's sort of ducking behind. And not only is there one, there's actually two, at least two. And you can see the light of the flashlight gleaming off of the black eye, those large black almond-shaped eyes. And I can see it clear as day. And you can actually see this, whatever this is, it's not a static image. It's not just some static thing up in the tree. It's actually slightly moving its head side to side and up and down. And you can see it in the video. Now people can make the claim that it's CGI. People can say that that it's somebody dressed up in a mask up there, up in a tree. Remember, they're shooting at these things with shotguns and rifles. Whatever. Okay, I don't know. Maybe it is. I'm not saying definitively that we're looking at tall gray aliens, but I suspect that we are. I suspect we're looking at maybe these insectilin type entities. There may even be in one of these videos. It's possible that you're also seeing the arm of this creature, which looks just like a praying mantis arm. And again, people are going to say, no, it's just a green blob or whatever. But what I find so fascinating about this video is that I've seen the same thing in the Vegas incident video. There are a whole bunch of fake hoax videos online surrounding the Vegas incident, but there's one that I believe is real. And obviously the news network came in and were filming, and they cut the cameras before they went back into that backyard with that forklift or whatever it was back there. And that's where these individuals from the Vegas incident said that the beings were kind of hiding out, was behind this forklift. And before they cut the video, somebody took that frame and they blew it up, or the last few frames. And you can actually see the same creature, the same being or beings ducking behind that forklift. And they do appear to be very tall, 7 feet tall. I think people confabulate 8, 9, 10 feet tall because the heads are so large, they're disproportionate to the bodies. And so when you see that huge, large mantis head, you assume that it's got to be 8 to 10 feet tall because it's so big. But we have to remember that the heads of these things are disproportionate to the bodies. They're not proportional to their bodies. They're much larger than we're accustomed to for heads on, let's say, humanoid beings. And I will say confidently that when I look at the Vegas video, and that particular one, and when I look at the video from this incident in Peru, I'm looking at the same creature. I'm seeing the same eye glare from light. I'm seeing the same exact face. I'm not saying it's the same individual. I'm saying it's the same, potentially the same race of beings involved in these incidents. Now, again, is it possible that CGI? Is it possible that the government is running some sort of Psyop and dressing up like these things and just perpetrating a hoax? Or are we looking at some sort of a holographic projection of an insectoid or mantis-like being, or insectoid rather? I don't know, but I do see it in the footage.
Yeah, that Vegas incident that started off with the UFO that was filmed, and people saw this kind of like shooting star UFO land in that backyard, and then the family there had that experience with that alien. I think that, personally, I think that this did involve an alien. That both the Vegas incidents and the incident in Peru involved genuine aliens. But I suspect that this was part of some kind of psyop, because aliens, different groups have actually reached agreements, and they do work with the secret government, deep state, whatever you want to call it, Majestic 12. They do collaborate. And Peru's a special case because recently the Peruvian parliament approved the entry of US troops into Peru, where they could just walk around with weapons of war, and that's right. Very unusual.
Very unusual. Yes.
So yeah, I mean, do you want to kind of like talk about that? What that suggests?
It's there's a project called Resolute Sentinel 23, and it's the third edition of a training exercise in what's called Southcom, the Southern Command. It involves roughly 1,000 personnel from the Air Force, Space Force, Army, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, and 8 partner nations, including Peru, Ecuador, Colombia, Great Britain, Brazil, Chile, Panama, and Uruguay. And they have been, for the last few months and ongoing this year, have been running, and I think since 2021, have been running these operations all over Peru. They're based out of Lima, but they've been running operations, I believe, in Brazil, Colombia, Peru, and perhaps in Ecuador. I'm not sure, but certainly Brazil, Colombia, and Peru, and indeed have been operating in the Iquitos region. So here's, I'm wondering, are we looking at another project high jump here, where we have an ostensibly we have this cooperative training, military training program underway, but is that a cover for something else? Are we looking at a live military operation whose real goal is to go in and try and flush something out of the jungle, or go and combat these non-human entities? I know that sounds far-fetched, and I don't necessarily believe that that's what's happening. I'm just thinking out loud. You can't help but wonder, right? When you see the bizarre cover story that was hatched by the Peruvian Navy in the midst of this Resolute Sentinel 23 operation happening in the country, it just makes me wonder if we're looking at a covert, hot conflict with non-human entities in the Amazon jungle.
That's how you would probably do it. If you had intelligence of some group of extraterrestrials marauding a particular area, you probably would want to have a military exercise being a cover,
Training, right?
or if you were planning that would actually make it much more plausible that this is actually a false flag operation, because as many have observed with false flag operations, they typically are preceded by some kind of military or government exercise. And in this case, you had Resolute Sentinel running from June 24 to July 25. Those are the official dates, as you mentioned, and that was in that area of the Ikitu tribe, and certainly they would have the capability, and it involves Space Force as well.
Yes.
So,
yes. Space Force, the Air Force, Space Force, Army, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard. That's quite the operation.
Exactly.
And there's actually two possibilities here. There is the possibility, there's probably three really, but there's the possibility that what we're looking at was some sort of advanced Psyop operation, psychological operation in the Amazon, in which let's say some special forces operators are dressed up in high-tech equipment with protective body armor and maybe advanced jetpacks that the public is not aware of, that do satisfy the details of this incident, and we're just maybe testing out their equipment or trying to perpetrate, trying to make people think that there's an attack by extraterrestrials. Who knows? I don't know. We could speculate all day long. Is that possible? That's certainly possible, but it's also possible, and this would be an alternative to that view, that rather than perpetrating this hoax, the operation, as I said, could be a cover for a hot war with non-human entities in the Amazon. Just like your friend just like your contact that you referenced, maybe these are super soldier type special operators who are going in under the cover of this training exercise and combating some kind of extraterrestrial, some sort of non-human creatures wandering around the jungle, or who are in fact terrorizing these villagers. That's a possibility. As fantastical as that sounds like a great movie, actually, but as fantastical as that sounds, I think it is a possibility. The least probable thing in all of this situation that we're discussing is gold miners with advanced jetpack technology. That's the least possible scenario.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I don't think it is gold miners. I don't think it's drug cartels. This is either genuine aliens doing what they've been doing for centuries, which is to harass people, fight with warriors, because the Predator-style movies, I think, are based on fact, or it's a special operation designed to simulate an alien attack, and they have their own agenda, and that could be where they want this to grow into something much more. Because I think, if you look at it from the big picture perspective, that is that, well, how do you pull off a false flag alien event that you can control the narrative without too many people kind of questioning or poking holes in it? If you did it in the United States, there'd be too many people that object. But if you did it in somewhere remote like Peru, and Peru has everything set up. I mean, the military's been admitted. The military can operate there freely. They don't have any problem. They're running exercises, and Peru has a history of working with these secret UFO ET projects.
That's a very good point. If you were going to do something like this psychological operation, simulating an alien attack, the Amazon's a perfect place to do it. And you have all these people who are saying, well, we're going to go out there and investigate. Look at, I mean, I've lived up in this area, not exactly in that area, but in the general region. And it's not easy to get up into these villages. And there's a lot of, these are red zones for malaria, by the way. I've had malaria 5 times. This is a difficult environment to operate in for a journalist just to go out there. Although the Peruvian press has sent people up there, probably from Iquitos, some of the correspondents in Iquitos. But it is the perfect environment if you're going to do that sort of operation and you're going to test out some of your high-tech, let's say this, high-tech jetpacks, right? Or holographic technology. I mean, this would be a perfect environment to test holographic technology, right? And you want to project sort of gray alien mantis type beings up in the trees. And that would explain why people shoot at them and nothing happens and they disappear or whatever. So high-tech holographs are definitely a potential here. But I would not remove from the table the notion that we're looking at actual physical entities of some kind, dare I say extraterrestrials, or perhaps some kind of indigenous alien, or let's say non-human intelligence that's been here for a very long time, as you said earlier. So I think, everything is possible here except for miners with jetpacks.
Well, people might question, whether or not it's feasible that there is this kind of extraterrestrial false flag event happening in Peru. But there is kind of precedent for this. I know of one case that involved a Lance Corporal from the US Marine Corps, Jonathan Weigard. He was a witness for the Disclosure Project, and he talked about a UFO crash retrieval operation where he was instructed to go and cordon off and sanitize the area. It's kind of like an hour's drive from Lima, Peru. This was in March of 1997, and he described how his squad got around there, sanitized the area, but he got too close. He saw the craft up close, and then the special forces or the black ops guys showed up, and they arrested him and said, "You dumb motherfucker! Why can't you follow orders? You weren't supposed to get there." So do you know about that case? How might it relate to this?
I recall that story. Yes, I do. Look, I mean, personally, I don't have any problem believing that these villagers are encountering actual extraterrestrials. One thing we didn't mention, and that people in Peru, in general, all over Peru, the Andes and the Amazon, encounter these things. Let's say rather routinely, at least in comparison to us over here in the United States and other parts of the world. Why that is, I don't know. Maybe just because of the remoteness of it. But one thing we did mention is the context in which this particular incident in Alto Nanay happened, and that is that there has been a heightened degree of high strangeness occurring in the Iquitos region over the last few months. There's no doubt about it. People have been coming forward for the last few months and reporting all kinds of strange things related to bizarre beings that they're witnessing in the jungle, aggressive activity surrounding UFOs. One might even say hostile activity surrounding UFOs, in which beams are projected down and people are being lifted off the ground or injured by the beams. I mean, there's a half a dozen incidents that have happened in the Peruvian Amazon in the last few months. And so this incident did not happen in isolation. Again, could it all be related to Resolute Sentinel 23, to this military operation, this joint military operation that these various nations are conducting in Peru? So it could be, but it also could be why these militaries are in Peru, why this operation is happening in Peru, to give cover to an operation whose real goal, whose real objective is to dislodge something from the Amazon or to combat something that's happening. So I'm open to many different possibilities. Again, certainly open to the possibility that these are actual non-human biological entities, and that they're actually terrorizing this village. And by the way, there's different stories in Peru regarding extraterrestrials. It's not just, pelacaras. There's also a lot of legends regarding the human-like extraterrestrials. Let's call them the Nordics, that the Andean people believe live beneath the Andes Mountains in sort of an underground city or civilization beneath the Andes. They call this group the Viracochas, and there's lots of sightings of the Viracochas in the Andes. And it seems to me that there's more sightings of the Greys in the Amazon and a lot more sightings of the Nordic type beings in the Andes. Take that for whatever it's worth.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point, because I've come across many contactee reports. I've actually traveled to Peru a couple of times and went to the what is it, the one with the deserts there, the Chilca Desert, I think it is.
Rockets?
The Chilca Desert, just kind of a couple of hours out of Lima, but it was with this the Contact Rama group, and that it's all about the Nordic extraterrestrials in the Andes, that they focus on them. But yeah, that makes perfect sense. That the Nordics are in the kind of high Andean mountains with bases, and then you have these kind of like more sinister creatures or
In the Amazon, yeah.
extraterrestrials in the Amazon. That kind of makes more sense. Now, just kind of pursuing this idea further of this being some kind of genuine extraterrestrial event, that or could be a false flag, that genuine extraterrestrial beings involved in some kind of false flag operation. Now, this is kind of pop culture, but I think it's worth mentioning is that in June, just a couple of months ago, you have the Transformers 7 movies coming out, and that took place, a lot of it took place in Peru, where there was this extraterrestrial war, and that kind of like is around the same time that Resolute Sentinel took place. So it's like, well, is that just coincidence, or is this again the deep state telegraphing what their plans are?
It's a very interesting detail that I had not considered, but I actually was walking down the street where they filmed a lot of that, a lot of those sequences in Cusco recently. I was there recently in June. And that's a very interesting detail. My God, all this attention, extraterrestrials and military training in Peru. Look, I'm going to say this. I've got some contacts in Peru, military contacts. These guys are high up in the Peruvian military, active duty and retired. And I'm putting the feelers out there, and I really want to know what these guys think, because they surely know all about these operations, are probably involved in these operations, and have their own thoughts on what's occurring. For all I know, they're just going to affirm the jetpack miner story. But there is something happening. Something very strange is going on in Peru, and you'll recall also that not too many years ago, what was it, 7-8 years ago, that Indiana Jones movie took place in Peru. Indiana Jones and was it the Crystal Skull, I believe was the title of the film, in which they're tracking down these artifacts, or trying to return these skulls to this city lost city in the jungle, and it turns out to be an extraterrestrial spaceship, basically. And the beings were these typical looking aliens with the elongated skulls. And so why all of this commotion, all of this chatter about extraterrestrials in Peru? In Peru, if you remove all of the extraterrestrial chatter, Peru is all by itself a very, very bizarre place, very unique, very interesting place in comparison with many other places on Earth. I'd say it's one of the most enigmatic places on planet Earth. Peru, having lived there, having been deep in the Amazon, having been up in the Andes, megaliths, the amount of megaliths in that country, it's just very bizarre in terms of its history and UFO activity. It is, the whole country seems to be a hotspot for UFO sightings. Everywhere you go, you talk to the locals, and they've all had, not all of them. I'm being a little bit hyperbolic, but many of them have had sightings of various forms of UFOs. And so I've always been fascinated with Peru, and so it's just so strange how the Hollywood and now the military seems to be so interested in that country.
Yeah, Peru definitely is a hotspot, and I think we're going to have a lot more coming out of Peru. I suspect that this is something that's going to build up. But one of the things that I thought I'd get you to kind of comment on, and it does relate to what's happening in Peru, is that there's a lot of debate over extraterrestrial motherships that have been seen. Of course, you have that paper that was written by Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick and Avi Loeb, that they were speculating that motherships could be behind these probes or orbs that are being seen all over the planet. They speculate, well, this mothership could be deploying some kind of AI intelligence because organic life wouldn't survive interstellar travel. So their take is that it's AI intelligence on these motherships. Others that I've been working with say that these are positive cedar races, and I know you've talked about the elder race, the return of the elder race. So with these motherships, and another theme in all of that is that the bad guys, the negative extraterrestrials, the reptilians, the Orion Greys have left. So what's your take on that? These motherships that apparently have shown up and are getting close to the Earth or in Earth's orbit. What's your take on what's behind them?
Well, I definitely resonate with the AI hypothesis. In other words, that an advanced extraterrestrial civilization would be deploying AI and would be using cybernetic biologicals. In other words, they would be using, we might say, cybernetic biologics, creatures that are manufactured, entities that are manufactured both of biological material and cybernetic material, technological materials, maybe even nanotechnology. Who knows? I mean, we're talking about advanced civilizations, and it makes perfect sense to me that you would deploy AI, and that you would not, if you had the capability to do so, you would not directly interface. Let's say if you are perpetrating the abduction, if you're perpetrating the abduction phenomenon, for example, that you would not yourself directly interface most of the time with abductees. Rather, you would send your manufactured cybernetic biologics to interface with them. That you would make use of artificial intelligence, and you could create a hive mind that's controlled by artificial intelligence. And so it is very possible that what we consider to be apparently biological extraterrestrial entities are in fact, what we are in fact interfacing with are cybernetic biologics running some sort of artificial intelligence, and that the real extraterrestrials, the real biological creatures, let's call them the native biological entities, are behind the scenes. And so we're interacting with their probes, we're interacting with their androids, and rarely actually encounter the actual entities themselves. I do find that to be quite intriguing. In fact, I think that's the way that we would do it. If we had the technology, if we were, let's say, thousands of years more advanced than where we are now, we have fully developed AI, we have fully developed biologic, cybernetic androids, let's say, and we came into contact with an extraterrestrial world that we wanted to investigate, rather than sending human astronauts, we would send all manner of probes and robots and androids and as I said, cybernetic biologics to that planet to interact with the creatures in the atmosphere and so forth before we ourselves would come. And again, that's just a long-winded way of saying that I find that theory quite intriguing.
Okay. All right. Well, that is kind of the kind of approach that I think R.V. Loeb and Sean Kirkpatrick would say that is very kind of sensible and fits within their kind of scientific paradigm. Of course, there are those that believe that we're on the verge of a negative alien invasion with genuine aliens that are going to be doing this. Others have said that the negative aliens have left our solar system, and I find that kind of debate very interesting, given these kinds of statements about motherships coming into our solar system, being close to us. And one of the people that I found a credible kind of like independent source, because I tend to be a little close to this issue, because I do tend to work with people who do have contacts with positive extraterrestrials, and they believe that the motherships that have arrived are part of the organic group that are kind of described as Nordic, benevolent, Pleiadian types. John Peterson from the Arlington Institute, who I'm familiar with, I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but he said something very interesting in one of the interviews that he did. He said that he has come across 3 independent sources, and I don't think he has the same sources that I have, saying that the negative extraterrestrial groups have had to leave our solar system recently, and the positives have filled the place, so that they are now running the show in our solar system. So, yeah, are you familiar with that, and what's your view on that?
My first question, and one that I would pose to you, is what do you make of the ongoing abductions then? If the negative extraterrestrials have left, the abduction phenomenon, to my knowledge, has not ceased. It's still ongoing. So I suppose that one could make the argument that that's being perpetrated by human beings, military or something, or MJ-12. But I find that quite doubtful for many reasons. So what would you make of the abduction phenomenon if the negative ETs have gone, the Greys, let's say?
Yeah, well, my take on it all is that you have different groups of extraterrestrials. You have the visitors, those from other solar systems that have come here, and that they take the Earth as a place to exploit, and they found willing participants or people that would make agreements with them. But there were also indigenous extraterrestrials on Earth, and not all of them are friendly. I mean, the indigenous ones are some of them are reptoids, and they treat humans as a food source, and so or maybe they take humans as an opportunity to develop their martial skills. And of course, there are different ways interdimensionals can also come into this. So I think it's a very complex picture, but I think it's possible that you could have like the vast bulk of negative extraterrestrials leaving because there's been some major development, whether it's an end of an age, positive extraterrestrials have come in, higher evolved elders, or seeders, whatever you want to call them, who are here to watch, and like, as we know, darkness flourishes where there's an absence of light, and where you have dark forces that do all these abductions when no one is paying attention, but when the light's turned on, they tend to disappear. So my guess would be that we probably have some abductions happening from indigenous extraterrestrial groups that aren't very friendly, but that the bulk of the negative abduction from those extraterrestrials that are service to self, that they've stopped. That's my kind of.
So there would be sort of a remnant of negative ETs left behind, still inhabiting the Earth. But the majority have departed.
I think that's the way they operate. I think that worlds like ours that undergo a transition, that for a time have been a prison planet, when they are on the verge of liberation, most of the dark ones leave, but they always leave a contingent behind to infiltrate, to create havoc so that they can return at some time. Because I think, Earth, humanity is just a valuable resource. And I think it's just like one drug cartel taking over from another drug cartel, or you have law and order coming in, cleaning things up, and then one cartel kind of tries to move in, displacing another. So yeah, I think the Earth is a place that has these criminal extraterrestrial organizations trying to take advantage of the situation. And then you have positive extraterrestrials trying to bring order, trying to help humanity evolve. And yeah, it's very complicated, but I think we're kind of like on an upward curve. That's my take.
See, I would take this, and obviously, you're well aware of the fact, and as I'm sure your audience, that I approach this topic from a biblical perspective. And in my book, Birthright, I postulate that the world is going to be made known. The world is going to be, let's say, enlightened to the existence of extraterrestrials at some point, the public at large, I mean, and that specifically we're going to be told about a particular group that poses a direct threat to humanity. And I think that group is going to be the Greys. I think that that's what that's what's sort of building in the background of these disclosure events that we're witnessing unfold in the media in the United States. I think at some point in time, we will all be made aware of a hostile group. Again, I believe it will be the Greys, with whom we are in open conflict. And this group is going to be in possession of technology, the likes of which we do not have, that outpaces our technology, perhaps by hundreds or even thousands of years, and that this will represent basically a threat for which we have no recourse. And I believe in that moment that there will be these more ostensibly benevolent beings who will show up to offer assistance to us in this conflict, and who will ultimately save us. I actually believe that the Vatican is preparing to receive this particular faction. These are the ones that look like us, as our extraterrestrial saviors, as the return of Christ. And so I would associate this event with the unfolding of events in Revelation, the book of Revelation. And I believe that there is a deception that will unfold involving these ostensibly benevolent beings who rescue us from the gray threat, from the gray alien threat. And so that's the way that I would view this unfolding. Now, I do not believe that all extraterrestrials are evil or hostile, because, as I've said before, I think on your program, I believe that the biblical narrative presumes the existence of extraterrestrials, of extraterrestrial beings, sentient beings, and that the majority of especially the ones that look like us, who I would call the elder race, angelic faction, that the majority of that faction are actually benevolent. If you want to get specific, you could say 1/3 are malevolent, 2/3 are benevolent. You can make that case, biblically speaking. So I think you and I would resonate on that point for sure. But looking at it theologically from a biblical perspective, I would expect our saviors to ultimately not be the friends of mankind, but the enemies of mankind, with an ulterior motive, and that would manifest as the revelation of who the Bible calls the Antichrist, the man of sin, until the actual return of Christ at Armageddon, in which there's this great conflict and Christ prevails. So that's the way that I, as a Christian, would view this, would view the unfolding of these events. But certainly I would affirm that by no means are all extraterrestrial factions evil, or the existence of extraterrestrials in itself some sort of a deception or anything like that. So again, I think we would resonate on on that point for sure.
Well, yeah, I think we're very close in terms of our perspective on the number, and I think that proportion that you described is probably very close. That 2/3 of the different extraterrestrials visiting us are benevolent, and 1/3 are negative, and that this is pretty much what different scripture describes. So, if we're going to relate all this to Peru and to these kind of end time prophecies, could this evolve in Peru into some kind of manufactured alien attack, where then you have manufactured alien rescuers come in, and that is something that the deep state tries to sell, and the Vatican, because I think the
Yes.
Vatican itself is controlled by this negative extraterrestrial group.
Yeah, it
So,
certainly
yeah, they
could.
try that.
Yes, that's a possibility. There's also a possibility that we are facing a very real alien threat, and that the government is scrambling A, to control the narrative, and B, to covertly combat this threat.
Mhm.
And are trying to keep it under wraps for as long as they can. But eventually the conflict will become so hot and apparent to all that it will be impossible to hide it anymore. That's also a potential, that's also a potential scenario here. So who knows? I mean, at this point, we have so little information. There's so much disinformation flowing through the internet right now and being fed to all different kinds of people in media, that it's hard to make sense of for example, some incident that happens in the middle of the Amazon that none of us can at least in an efficient manner run down there and come back and report in a couple of days. So we're left to sort of make sense of what we're seeing unfold in the news, but I think we can both agree that something is up in Peru. Something is up.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. So, where do people go, Timothy, to kind of find out more about you, to buy your book, and to register for any kind of upcoming tours that you have?
People can find me on YouTube, Timothy Alberino. I have a YouTube channel. On Twitter and on Instagram, my handle is always the same, Timothy Alberino. And then also my website, you can sign up for my mailing list. And I usually always send out updates through my emailing list regarding whatever activities that I'm involved in, and opportunities for public tours and the like.
Well, thanks, Timothy, for coming on the show and sharing your insights on what's going on in Peru. I'm sure a lot of people appreciate it. I certainly do.
Thank you so much, Dr. Salla, for having me back.
You have been listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Join or start a conversation in the comments. Take the time to explore the vast library of best-selling books, webinars, and podcasts by Dr. Salla. Visit exopoliticstoday.com.